Welcome to another exciting episode of Submission Radio. It's August 17th. Set aside the next couple of hours as we bring you an MMA dinner party with some big names today. Isn't that right, Cass?
Oh, dinner party. I like the sound of that. We absolutely will, and we do have some big guests. No time to mess around. The guests are Randy Couture. The Natural will be back on Submission Radio to talk about all things Expendables. We're going to ask him some questions about Fedor. There's a lot of stuff we want to talk to about with Randy. Gym Rescue, of course. Then we got Phil Davis, Mr. Wonderful. He's going to be stopping by the show to talk about a lot of things. You know, the breaking news is Gustafsson's left Alliance MMA. Want to talk to him about that. And then, of course, while everyone's talking about DC and Jon Jones, we got Daniel Cormier's trainer, Javier Mendez, on the show. He's always interesting, and he doesn't pull any punches. So we're going to have him towards the end of the show. What else do we have, Dennis?
That's right, Cass. We will be breaking down UFC Fight Night 47, Beta versus OSP, get our opinions on what people say has been one of the most boring main events in a long time. We may disagree with that. We also break down some of the biggest comebacks of the month in UFC. You know, it used to be easier to say of the year, but there's so many cards now. I'm just going to put insurance on myself and just say for the month. And also, guys, you know, we got an opportunity to meet up and do some great things with Kit Dale. We've got some content coming out soon. Check him out at kitdalebjj.com and check out his school at www.infinitymartialarts.com.au. And finally, you know, me and Cass have been pretty busy, and we had an exclusive interview with Diego Sanchez, and he was down in Melbourne. We played a couple of silly games. You guys can check that out on our YouTube channel right now. And a big thanks to MMA Fight Store, mmafightstore.com.au, one of the best stores when it comes to MMA apparel in Melbourne and everything MMA. They always bring the big names down to Australia. It's always a pleasure to work with those guys too.
Yeah, absolutely. Check out the video. The link will be in the description below. By all means, guys, as always, we can be caught on Twitter at SubmissionAus, at SubmissionAUS. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the channel if you like. Like we said, got tons and tons of content coming up, and a brand new episode every single goddamn week of the year. But until then, well, without further ado, guys, I think it's time to get our first guest on the show. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, that's right. So, guys, just a quick breakdown. We're going to have Randy Couture on the show first, followed by Phil Davis, and finally Javier Mendez. Now, Javier Mendez, he's coming back on the show. He's been on the show before, and we have to tell you guys, he's one of the most articulate, most honest guests that we've had on the show. So definitely stick around till our chat with Javier. As Casper mentioned, we'll be talking DC, Jon Jones, Luke Rockhold, Jon Fitch. We're going to be talking about a whole bunch of fighters from the AKA Academy, and you don't want to miss out on what Javier is going to say, because he is one of the most honest guests we've ever had.
All right, guys, our next guest needs very little introduction. He is one of the most iconic MMA fighters of all time. He is, if you want the stats, 3-time UFC heavyweight champion, 2-time UFC light heavyweight champion. He was even a light heavyweight interim champion, UFC Hall of Famer, none other than Randy Couture. Randy, welcome back to Submission Radio. How are you?
I'm good. How are y'all doing down there?
We're doing really well, really well. Now, Randy, it's a little bit weird doing another interview with you now that you're not on a mountain bike in the middle of the desert.
Yes, it is a little strange. If I planned ahead, I could have made that happen again.
Now, Randy, we had a chance to watch the first episode of Gym Rescue. We really enjoyed it. I actually got my girlfriend to watch it. She never watches anything. And you and Frank, you guys have a great dynamic on the show. How have you enjoyed working on this project, and what's the experience been like making this for you?
Well, I think overall the experience was very good. I think there were parts of the process that were a little painful. I think these gyms and gym owners are kind of so screwed up that you almost got to get a little fired up to make them see what, the error in their ways. And that's not really my style in most cases. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 times in my entire life that I've raised my voice to somebody. So the process in parts was a little painful and a little uncomfortable for both Frank and I.
Yeah, it seemed like, Frank definitely turned on his bad cop persona during the shooting. Were earplugs provided to stop you from losing your hearing with Frank constantly yelling at everything and everyone?
My ears don't catch that much sound anyway, so I was good to go there.
When you're shooting a show like Gym Rescue, there's so much work to be done. Did anything crazy happen behind the scenes while you guys were traveling from gym to gym around America and shooting the show?
You know, not too crazy. I mean, it's always interesting being in a new place, staying in a hotel. But we worked, you know, pretty long days. There wasn't a lot of free time. There was no trouble had by anybody really. We just kind of figuring out the lay of the land, where are the good places to eat. You know, probably the craziest thing that happened is the raft. When we raft, we went to a tilted kilt, and Frank and I actually donned kilts, and that was probably the craziest thing that happened.
We'll have to see that in the bonus DVD features. Randy, you know, you're a cool, calm guy from everything that we've heard. And obviously said that, you know, yelling and things like that's not your style, but were you a little bit surprised sometimes to see how, you know, passionate, obviously, in the first episode you were? And what was it hard for you to keep your cool sometimes when dealing with these gyms and seeing just how bad they were?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult at times to not get fired up. A couple things that happened, that, you know, things that were said, you know, especially when you consider that we're walking into these places, taking time away from our lives and our schedules to try and help these folks out. We kind of had to keep our eye on that prize, because the first 3 days of the 5-day shoot process is basically tearing them down, picking them apart, and that wasn't always fun. And that wasn't, you know, sometimes I had to get a little amped up to make them see what we're trying to tell them.
Now, did Frank learn his lesson? Is he going to call anyone else lazy throughout the season?
Yeah, Frank has a very unique way of finding people's buttons sometimes, and he certainly hit a hot button with Craig, calling him lazy, and triggered a response. Maybe not the wisest response, but a response just the same. You know, I think at the end of the day, sometimes you got to say what needs to be said, and I think that's all that Frank was doing. So,
understood. Now, Randy, grappling is something that's your bread and butter, and last weekend, Metamoris got a lot of great publicity. At one point, when Chael was having a few issues with the commission, your name was brought up as a possible late replacement. How close did you come to participating at Metamoris?
Well, I certainly considered it. Chael called me up. Obviously, Chael and I have been personal friends for a long, long time, and he thought I might be a viable candidate to step up if he decided to opt out because of the pressure and the commission in Nevada. But I had to be honest with him, and, you know, that's a very high-caliber match. I have a lot of respect for his opponents. To take that on a week's notice, not having, you know, had any time to prepare, wouldn't have been the wisest decisions to do that, as well as having all the press junkets and the premiere coming up last Monday anyway. There would have been no way to really pull that off and be effective. So, you know, I don't know. It just didn't make sense to me to do it as much as I'd like to have helped.
And, you know, Randy, you spoke to us about how much you loved competing. You know, Metamoris seems like a no-brainer for you because you're such a good grappler. Would you consider being a part of something like that in the future? And just for everybody listening at home, how much do you train still on your grappling, on your striking? How much time do you spend in the gym now? Because I know you're a very busy guy.
Spend a lot of time in the gym. I just don't do a lot of sparring. I really don't do a whole lot of striking at all. If I do striking, it's with our, you know, kickboxing coaches to hit mitts and you know, keep the tools sharp. But I do a little more grappling. It's a little less invasive on the, you know, the neck and the face and those things that, you know, I've kind of taken a beating over the years. So, but even that, you know, I'm having a lot more fun hiking, getting out in the woods, riding the bike. You know, I do spend a fair amount of time in the gym every week with our strength conditioning coaches, kind of doing the same kind of cross training that I did for years as a fighter. I think at the end of the day, I still got to stay in shape. I can't let myself go. So it's kind of part of what keeps you sane.
Well, absolutely. And in terms of grappling, I mean, you know, there were years when you were going after, you know, the last Emperor, Fedor Emelianenko. And, of course, that's the matchup that I think fans to this day would still like to see. Would you ever consider doing, say, a grappling match now that you're both retired from MMA?
I don't know. That would be interesting. I'm certainly given the time to prepare and get back up into good, solid grappling and wrestling shape. that would be a lot of fun. And I think, I'm not sure how active Fedor is at this stage, him being retired as well, but I'm certainly not opposed to an idea like that.
Absolutely, Randy. Now, Mark Bocek was doing an interview last week, and he brought up an interesting perspective that we haven't heard before. Mark brought up the fact that he believes PEDs are a big problem in grappling. He believes they're a problem in grappling competitions. Of course, this is due to the fact that competitions don't have the money needed to run tests and similar things like in MMA. Do you think PEDs are a problem in grappling?
It's hard to say. Are you talking about Fedor?
Sorry, I think maybe it cut out. Maybe I'll just ask the question again. So Mark Bocek was doing an interview last week, and he was talking about how he believes that PEDs may be a problem in grappling competitions.
PEDs. All right.
Yeah.
Now I'm up with the question.
That's okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I think there's always going to be some guys that try to cut corners. They're looking for that shortcut or that loophole. And are willing to kind of take that risk. I mean, the penalty is pretty significant. If you get caught, you're going to lose the opportunity for at least a year to make a living in your sport. And I mean, that not to mention the damage to your reputation. So I think there are always going to be a handful of guys that are willing to kind of take those risks. And I think there was a loophole that maybe some of the guys were using a little bit with the TRT programs, which obviously has been closed recently and made a lot of headlines. But I didn't really agree with Mark's statement that it was rampant in mixed martial arts. I don't think it's rampant. I think if it was rampant, there'd be a lot more guys coming up positive on tests, and there's certainly been a few guys, but if it was rampant, there'd be a whole lot more. So I don't know if I agree with that statement, but I think it's human nature.
Now, Randy, let's get to the pressing news. Expendables 3 is out in Australia this week. We haven't seen the movie yet. However, the cast in the movie is pretty spectacular. What's the best thing about working with such an action-packed cast? And did you show a few moves to the guys like Antonio Banderas and Wesley Snipes and possibly even Kelsey Grammer?
You know what? It was a great group of guys to hang out with. We've just finished up all the press tour and the press junkets, and we got to go to the film festival in the south of France and just had a blast with all these guys. And I think the thing that's surprising and most people find surprising is that there was no egos and kind of crap going on set with a bunch of alpha males that have all been there and been at the top of the game. I think we were all happy to be part of such a special project. And it's kind of been that way since Expendables 1, to be honest. I think Sly sets the stage and sets the pace for everybody from his attitude and how amazing he is to doing his own stunts, and it all kind of trickles downhill from there. I did get to confer and kind of share notes on training and a lot of things with Wesley Snipes and obviously Terry Crews and Dolph. Dolph has his personal trainer there on set with him, so it was a lot of fun. We had a great time.
Now, Mel Gibson has gotten some great reviews for his role as the bad guy in this movie. What was it like working with Mel, and did you show him how to do a proper triangle choke, fixing up the terrible mistake he made when he used it on Gary Busey in Lethal Weapon 1? We all remember that. My jiu-jitsu coach always brings it up when teaching the triangle. Did you rectify the triangle?
That's funny. I actually didn't get any scenes with Mel during the shooting. The scheduling for getting all those guys in and out of Bulgaria and getting them shot, especially a high-profile guy like Mel, was a huge challenge. And I don't know how Lionsgate managed to pull that off, but I was there, for the run of picture. Kelsey and Harrison and Mel were really in country 4 or 5 days. Get in there, got their scenes done, got out. Didn't really have any scenes with Kelsey or Mel, so I didn't get to meet them until we started all the press stuff. And obviously in that setting, in that circumstance, we're not exactly exchanging technique. So I found them both enjoyable to be around, but didn't get to confer with them on the movie set in our gear and all that.
The triangle, it remains unfixed. Now, Randy, before we do the Submission Radio Tap Hour round with you again like last time, we've got a few fan questions. The fans obviously knew you would come on the show. They sent some questions in. So just a few of them. Tough Guy wants to know, do you think Jon Jones would have risen to the top of the 205 division when the big names in the division were in their prime, such as yourself, Chuck, Rampage, Silver Shogun, and Vitor?
I mean, I think he has all the tools that he needs to be at the top of the division back then or now. I think, there would have been some toss-up fights, just like him and Daniel Cormier. I mean, who's going to win that fight? Both guys are very tough. I think, obviously, Daniel has Jon's undivided attention right now. That's why he's been kind of acting a fool and doing some of the things that he's been doing. But it's, it's really hard to say until guys actually get in the cage and fight. You can debate it all day long.
Now, Randy, you've been in the ring with some of the biggest, hardest hitters in the MMA sport. Cut Strike would like to know, who do you remember hitting the hardest? Was it Belfort? Was it the Iceman? Was it Lesnar?
I think the person that I hit the hardest was Gabe Gonzaga. I came out and in the first 15 seconds of that fight, hit him with a left hook that I don't think he expected me to strike with him at all, and I think that kind of changed his mind about where he was in the fight. Obviously, I think the takedown was really the game changer in the grand scheme of the fight, but I think that first shot that I caught him with backed him up to the fence and put us in that clinch game that I liked so much. But the only time I ever really came close to knocking somebody out was the Tim Sylvia fight. That first punch in the first 25 seconds of that fight, and I think I was as surprised as everybody as he when he fell down. So
that was crazy. That was a crazy fight, given how a lot of people were very surprised by that. What about who hit you the hardest? Who do you remember being the hardest hitter?
Well, I've only really been knocked out one time. I got flashed by Lesnar. I got flashed by Chuck in the third fight, but the second fight with Chuck was the only time I really got knocked out and kind of lost that little piece of time. So, I mean, that has to be the hardest I've ever been hit in my 14 years as a fighter.
Now, Randy, Magnum 1978, again, the Fedor fight, people still talk about it to this day. Obviously, it didn't happen, but had it happened, what do you think your game plan would have been, to take on the strengths of Fedor?
I think given his judo background, it would have been interesting to approach him the way I approached a lot of guys that were as powerful and striking as him. He would have been a challenge to kind of neutralize with my Greco-Roman background and tie him up on the fence. Obviously, I think it'd make a difference if we were in a fence or a ring. A lot of his best fights were in a ring. They weren't in a cage. So I still like my chances, certainly in the infighting and the clinch fighting, to maybe make him work a little harder than a lot of guys did. But he always seemed to be very fit. I didn't see a weakness there. And I think that's one of the reasons why I always wanted to fight him, because it would have been a huge challenge. Like a Lyoto Machida, who has such an odd, interesting style. It was very hard to train for him and figure out, the solutions to the problems that he posed. I think Fedor would have been an interesting problem to solve as well.
Absolutely, and I think that's why that possible grappling competition could be a great thing in the future if it ever pops up. Now, Richard Rader would like to know, Dana White has been talking a lot recently about his exhibition match with Tito Ortiz. Who do you think would have won if Tito and Dana ended up having that exhibition boxing match?
It's really hard to say. Obviously, a limited rules of engagement with just boxing is probably in Dana's favor. I don't think that Tito ever really took it seriously, which is why it never really occurred. He backed out of it a couple times. And Tito's boxing is certainly something he worked on a lot and has gotten a lot better at over the years. Whether or not he could have hung with a guy that is Dana's sole background is a question we'll probably never get answered. I think it's a little silly for the president of a $100 million company to be fighting with his talent, and it's really a lose-lose for Tito. He's as one of their marquee fighters, for him to lose to the president of the company didn't really make a lot of sense to me. So it's probably a fortunate thing that it didn't happen for both parties. But it's really, again, hard technically to say who wins and who loses. I think maybe they both lose in that fight. Even if Tito goes out and beats him, who did he really beat?
Definitely.
And if he loses to Dana, then that doesn't look so great for the company and one of the company's top performers in mixed martial arts either.
Yeah, definitely one of the wilder things in MMA. Now, here's another last fan question before we do the tap-out round. Don't call it a comeback wants to know, and this is to do with your co-star Ronda Rousey. What are your thoughts on Ronda Rousey beating Floyd Mayweather? A lot of people are commenting on that. And would she really stand a chance against one of the greatest boxers of all time, given the difference in styles?
Well, again, what are the rules of engagement? Is it a boxing match?
It wouldn't be
a boxing match. I don't think she'd stand a chance in a boxing match with Floyd.
No, of course.
If it's an MMA engagement, I think Floyd would be done in about 2 minutes.
Interesting. All right, Randy, now we're going to do the tap-out round where we fire off a bunch of questions. It's like word association, and you basically tell us the first thing that comes to your mind. You ready?
Yep.
All right, when rescuing gyms, did you ever go into any gyms with just a single door, and when the gym owner was asked where the gym was, he pointed to the door and told you, I got a door, I got a gym?
Yeah, T3 comes to mind.
Now, Randy, we understand that you're working on new ideas for TV projects of Spike. We're very excited to see if anything comes from it. But we sat down with a marketing department, and we came up with 3 surefire hits that will be bigger than Big Bang Theory and 2.5 Men combined. So I'm going to read you out 3 of our ideas for potential shows that you can do on Spike in the future, and you tell us which one is your favorite, okay?
Okay.
Okay, this one is called Randy Couture's Date Rescue. It's similar to Gym Rescue. Someone is on a bad date, you come in and show their date a good time. Meanwhile, the original guy is led to the parking lot and gets locked out of the studio, never to be seen again. So that's the option number 1. Option number 2 is Randy Couture's Gym Destruction. It's very similar to Gym Rescue, except you and Frank Shamrock go to successful gyms and destroy them and then run away. And number 3 is Wrestling with Geeks. We break into a bunch of geeks' houses, we rip them away from their PlayStation 4s, we make them climb mountains, run with bulls, wrestle bears, take them to strip clubs, go skinny dipping, make them build objects from rich mahogany, and even make them create tents from half a cup of sugar and 12 toothpicks. Eventually, there will only be one champion. Which one do you choose?
Oh boy, that's a tough choice.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with 3. I think the geek show sounds like a fun show, and that would be interesting.
Yeah, we definitely pay to see it. Now, Randy, what's your prediction for the Diaz versus Silva super fight?
Really interesting. And both these guys and their styles. In some ways they have very similar fighting styles, both the boxing. Be interesting to see what kind of game plan that Diaz comes up with and how he approaches, how he approaches a guy like Sylvia. Still some questions with Sylvia's first fight back after the leg injury, and how is he going to hold up, and really how much desire is there for him to continue to fight and grind out camps and get into top-level fights. So, they both may just stand there and kind of taunt each other, and nobody will throw a punch, too. It could be that kind of fight, but hopefully they get after it, and I kind of like Diaz in that fight.
Ooh, it will be very, very interesting. Now, Randy, what do you think about Scott Coker taking over Bellator? Do you think it's going to be a positive turnaround for the company?
Absolutely. I think Scott's already made some changes in just 1 month. Obviously, my son just signed a contract with them, a 4-fight deal, and I get a look at the contract, and the changes that Scott's already made to the fighter contracts is pretty significant, and loosening those contracts and really trying to establish a better rapport with the fighters, not being in a position to be suing fighters and legal actions with the fighters, but building a partnership, helping them get endorsements and really kind of build the brand. I think you're going to see a considerable rebranding of Bellator with Scott's tutelage. He's been one of those guys over the years that I've met in the fight game that I have a ton of respect for. He's a handshake type of guy. He says he's going to do something for you, he's going to do it. There'll be no hemming and hawing or bullcrap about it. So I'm very excited about Scott getting involved there, and I'm also excited that Ryan's going to be getting a chance to get back in the cage and fight.
Absolutely. Now, Randy, what's the most difficult thing about being an actor?
There's some similarities to acting and fighting. It's a 12-week or more process to make a good movie, and it's generally around the time frame that you're in camp for a fight. So it's kind of a grind. It's a long process. You have to be diligent, be prepared, be in the moment. All those things from fighting translate to acting. I think there's a physicality about acting as well. It's maybe not quite as rough physically as training camp in a fight, but there's certainly a mental toughness when you're working 12, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week, trying to grind out the film all for that one night to get to see it come together in the premiere. So there's some tremendous similarities between acting and fighting.
Wow, well put. Now, what music does a real man listen to while working out?
Yeah, I'm a huge country and western fan. So I mean that's generally what you'll be hearing in my iPod and my earbuds, which may be a little different than what most fighters listen to. But I'm for me it's always about relaxing, getting the most out of myself physically by being able to relax and go out and train and do what I need to do. So I like country.
No one's going to argue with you, Randy, because it seems like it's worked out for you. Now, Expendables 4, we're hearing rumors that it's coming out. Now, obviously, the movie would need a bad guy. So one last game, Randy. Our marketing department decided to come up with some suggestions as to who could play the main lead role for the bad guy in the upcoming movie. Now, we would like an official acknowledgement in the credits if any of our suggestions were implemented. Number one would be Jerry Seinfeld. The movie starts and ends with Jerry doing stand-up similar to his show. Charlie Sheen, he wouldn't need to act much for a lot of the scenes. Steven Seagal, and he would bring his band with him, killing people by playing his album Songs from the Crystal Cave on repeat. Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise, think about it.
Only if I get to kill Steven Seagal at the end of the movie.
Well, I mean, I think it'd be a smash blockbuster hit. Bigger than Arnold Schwarzenegger's Jingle All the Way. Tom Cruise, think about it. Tom Cruise, enough said. Or the pig from Babe in the City. The pig has a mean streak a mile long. Which of those would you choose, Randy?
I think we could fit some prosthetic, teeth on that pig. It would be amazing. Their tusks, put some giant tusks on there, he would be ridiculous.
Oh man, I mean the pig's only shown its good side, so I feel like there's a mean streak, like Casper said, a mile long that it could show off in the movie. Guys, you can follow Mr. Couture on Twitter at Randy_Couture. His movie Expendables 3 is out in Australia now, nationwide, and you got to check out his new show Gym Rescue. I'm telling you, if you're not an MMA fan, you're gonna love it, and if you are an MMA fan, you're gonna love it even more. The natural Randy Couture, thank you so much for coming on Submission Radio.
You bet, guys. Thanks for having me on.
This is Tito Ortiz, the People's Champ, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest is a UFC light heavyweight. He's a former Submission of the Night winner and one of the nicest guys in MMA. He is none other than Mr. Wonderful Phil Davis. Phil, welcome to Submission Radio. How you going?
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. And I just want to let you know, I resent that introduction there. Nicest guy to MMA. I'm shooting for nicest guys in the world.
Yeah, all right.
Apparently, I missed my mark.
I know. We didn't do our research properly. We'll amend that in post editing. Don't you worry about that. But let's talk about this. Seeing as you are the nicest guy in the world, since your last Octagon appearance, since UFC 172, what have you been up to, Phil? What's been new in your life?
Not too much new. A lot of the same. You have those times where you just need to put your nose down and work hard and get better and improve in some areas and fill in some of the holes in your game.
Now, the big announcement that came out, Phil, was that you'll be fighting Glover Teixeira at UFC 179. What do you think about this matchup? Are you happy to be fighting Glover next? Is he someone who you've been meaning to match up with for a while now?
Absolutely. I think it's a great matchup. He's obviously Brazilian. The fans seem to really like me down in Brazil after I'm done fighting. And it should work out well.
All
Another trip down in Brazil, another chance to have an awesome performance down there. The fans down there are absolutely fanatical about MMA, so I'm just excited about the matchup, the venue, the fight, co-main, everything. Should be a great opportunity to put myself back in the title hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of guys, they're a bit weary about fighting in Brazil. Guys like Chad. We had Chad Mendez, TJ Dillashaw, and even last week Luke Rockhold. They sort of expressed that they'd rather fight in the States. You, on the other hand, I believe you're undefeated in Brazil. Do any of those things worry you at all about Brazil, like the commission or the judges or anything like that?
Well, there's no commission. Do I worry about the judges? Absolutely, I worry about the judges. Is it going to be a fair fight? No, it's not going to be a fair fight. Do I expect it to be, uneven? Absolutely. But, at some point, I got to give these guys a little bit of credit because they come over to America and they fight, and you very seldom hear them complain. So I first have to say that. Now, having said that, there's a little bit of home field advantage, and I acknowledge that. But at the same time, I'm ready to scrap.
Absolutely, Phil. Now, we saw a very hilarious video of you getting Cormier, you and Luke Rockhold getting Cormier ready for the Jon Jones eye pokes recently. It was a great video. But just wondering, for your fight at UFC 179, will you continue training with Cormier and Luke now that the fight's been postponed for your own purposes to get ready for Glover?
Yep. I was helping out DC get ready for Jon Jones. And he was helping me get ready for Glover Teixeira. So, but, more than anything, Daniel Cormier, Rockhold, Cain Velasquez, all the guys up at AKA, they're just great to train with. Been knowing the guys for a long time, training with them a bunch over the last couple of years. And it was just great to get back up there with them, meet up, get some training in, and, just do my thing.
Now, speaking of training, obviously a stablemate at Alliance has been Alexander Gustafsson for quite a while. Now, news came out, I believe, just today that Gustafsson is moving on. I think he's going to be training a lot more back at home, back in Sweden. I think he was citing, expenses and things like that being one of the issues. And also, he was being quite realistic that you guys could possibly fight in the future, not that he'd really want to. What are your thoughts about that?
What are my thoughts about what?
Just in general, Gustafsson leaving. I mean, you guys were like bros, you guys were pals, and now he's left Alliance.
I think you said it perfectly. I don't think anything has changed. I think we are bros. We are pals. So we get together, we'll train together again, Right now, life brings you different seasons. Sometimes what's right for one time isn't right for the next time, and it's perfectly fine to do whatever you do in whatever season you're in your life. And that's fine. At the end of the day, we're boys.
Absolutely. So the friendship continues. That's very interesting. Now, speaking of Gustafsson, he was supposed to have the official title match against Jones. He got injured and DC stepped in. Now, Gustafsson's in the unfortunate position where, he'd like to get his title shot against Jones on January 3rd, but now Cormier has taken that spot. Do you think that Gustafsson should have gotten the title shot now that he'll be healthy to fight Jones, considering he was the original person who was matched up against Jones and DC was filling in?
Well, honestly, here's what it comes down to. It comes down to what makes the most sense. And unfortunately, my boy Alex got hurt when he was preparing for his title shot. And I truthfully believe he was going to win the belt. So, does that suck? Absolutely that sucks. He was about to be the champion of the world. My boy's about to be champion of the world. So, obviously, I'm upset about that. But at the same time, Daniel Cormier gets matched up when he gets injured, and then Jon Jones becomes injured. I don't, on one hand, I do think it should go back to Alex, and on the other hand, I do agree that it should stay, Jones should stay matched up with Daniel Cormier. And truthfully, I don't really know what I would do had I been in that position, had it been my call. But I can honestly say it's not my call, and I don't care who fights him first.
I think of Phil Davis as well. You'll definitely want to fight him. But next up, obviously, you've got Glover Teixeira. Now, in your last fight, you fought Anthony Rumble Johnson. He was a guy with a lot of strength and a lot of knockout power. And in Glover, you'll find some similar attributes. What are your plans to deal with Glover's knockout power?
I'm going to have to do a better job than Anthony Johnson, I can tell you that. But I'm definitely going to have to get some range going, and after that, wrestling, use my strikes to put him in hot water and make him make some tough decisions.
Absolutely. You mentioned your fight against Anthony Johnson. Just from that fight itself, what do you think is the biggest thing that you learned from that entire experience?
I'm sorry, what was the...
what was the thing that you think? Yeah, what did you take away from that situation? Obviously, it didn't come out in your favor, but what did you take away from that situation?
Well, I tell you what I took away. I can definitely take a punch and not complain about it. I learned that. I learned Rumble Johnson hits hard. I know that. That's too fat. Put those down. That is a fact. So, there's a lot I can take out of that. I wasn't performing at my absolute best. I knew that going in, but what do you do? I'm a competitor. I will never back away from a fight. It's just not what I do. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to quit. I had to be smarter with my preparation. Employ a different game plan against Glover Teixeira, and really make sure I take the fight to him and not get caught on my heels.
And prior to the fight against Jon Jones, Glover was undefeated for a long time, and Jon Jones really put on a clinic against him. Watching that fight at UFC 172, is there anything that you took away from that fight and learned, and maybe looking to employ against Glover, maybe using like a shoulder crank or anything like that?
All of that would definitely be true, but honestly, I've only seen a little bit of his fight with Jon Jones. I was actually not watching that fight. If you can believe that, I was not happy at the time. Wow. He was busy fighting Jon Jones. Mm-hmm. So I definitely will review that fight in preparation for my next fight, and we'll see what I come up with.
Now, Phil, obviously, if you beat Glover, you'll be back in the title picture. When you and Jones had a bit of banter back and forth, Jones took it fairly well. Now, with DC, for some reason, DC really gets under Jones's skin. Why do you think DC is so effective at getting a reaction out of Jon Jones?
Well, he's effective at it because that is what DC does. He's just a natural-born antagonist. He just has it in his skin. His blood. It's just, he can't help it. If you're in the gym with him, he's just a guy to tease you. And if you know him, you have fun. If you don't know him, you won't have fun. Mm. So that's why, because he's good at it. And it's probably even worse and intensified because he may have some strings of merit to some of the things he says.
And, the two had a bit of a scuffle. I think it was a week or a couple of weeks ago now. A lot of people are saying, including Luke Rockhold, that it's good for business. It's going to drive the pay-per-view up heaps. As a fighter who's been in plenty of stare-downs, what did you think about it? What would you have done if you were in that kind of situation?
What would I have done? If I were who?
I guess either. I guess DC.
Well, if I were DC, I would have probably done exactly what he did. A lot of guys try to be a little bit too extra. It's one thing to give me a hard stare down or attempt to intimidate me, but if he was trying to headbutt him, well, you got to get him out your face.
Well said, Phil. Now, we let people know that you're coming onto the show, and we've got a whole bunch of fan questions, so we'll ask you a couple. Rico69 wrote in, he said he loved the video with you and Luke, and you and Luke were prepping Cormier for the eye pokes ahead of the Jones fight, but he's wondering, on a more serious note, how dangerous are those eye pokes to opponents that Jones throws, and do you think that he throws them deliberately?
How serious are the eye pokes? The eye pokes are probably not that serious. But an eye poke in the straight right hand, that's actually quite serious. You know, listen, it's not something that happens every once in a while. It happens quite often for some guys. You know, and, man, I got the worst of it. After I poked Wagner Prado in the eye, I was getting the worst of it from, you know, from the UFC, from the referees, and I had to make sure it never happened again. So we made sure it never did happen again. But I'm starting to get the feeling he's not getting the pressure to make sure it doesn't happen again. So maybe someone needs to take a point. And a lot of times referees are scared to take a point in a title fight. Yeah. And I mean, it's not even like, you know, first of all, the referees have so much pressure on their job as it is. It's not an easy job. You know, there's two guys out there fighting with a lot of pressure on them, and then there's a referee who's fighting against two guys with a lot of pressure on them. I get it. But at the same time, I'm still going to go in there and win, and I still need that referee to go in there and make the correct call. So if you're poking people in the eyes multiple times in a fight, well, listen, you got to make the call. You know, when I fought down in Brazil, I made it perfectly clear to the referee prior to going in the octagon. I made it perfectly clear. I said, listen, okay, this is the thing. People know that I wrestle. I'm going to take you down. You can't help that. That's what I do. People want to grab the fence. What are you going to do when they grab the fence? He said, Phil, if it stops a takedown, I will take a point immediately. If it doesn't stop the takedown, I won't take a point. Now, already that rule is horrible because I have to not get a takedown in order for you to take a point. That's a lot of energy I just wasted. But anyway, my point is, sure enough, in that fight against Wagner Prado, I took him down 3 or 4 times, and in the series, in the sequence of one takedown, he grabbed the fence a total of 10 times. And the referee told him to stop grabbing the fence 10 times, including 3 slaps on the hand. At what point do you say, this guy's not going to listen? You know? So, again, when it gets back to the eye pokes, something needs to be done. They need to warn him before he goes out. Listen, people complain about your eye pokes. If you poke someone in the eye and it looks inadvertent, we'll let it go 1 time. Second time, inadvertent or not, we're taking a point. And I think you'll be a little bit more intentional after that.
It's very interesting. Phil, you're the kind of guy that we would love to see in judging or reffing possibly after a long fight career. But we've got a fun thing to do. We do with all our guests. It's called the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. We'll basically fire off a bunch of questions at you. They're all fun questions, and you basically answer them with the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. What's the best thing about the sport of wrestling?
Best thing about the sport of wrestling is starving yourself, making weight, and feeling like a man after you win.
Now, what's Mr. Wonderful's best bowling score? And we're not going to accept games with bumpers. Those aren't included.
I missed the second half of that question.
Well, you can't give us scores if you had the bumpers up, Phil. Like we weren't there, but you know we trust you to give us proper bowling scores.
Right. Well, okay. My best score is somewhere around like 160, 170. I am truthfully not a great bowler. I probably average around 120, somewhere around there. But every now and then you get high, you know? It happens. So, yeah, but with the bumpers up, I'm pretty sure I could do pretty good. Although I've seen someone once with the bumpers up do just about as good as they did with the bumpers down, and I think it's because if you can't roll a strike, you can't roll a strike. And the bumpers just won't make that happen. They keep it on the lane. So, that I might have to try that. I've never played with the bumpers up.
I like that. You broke it down play-by-play style, very technical. Now, Phil, you're a fantastic grappler. Will we ever see Phil Davis participate in a Metamoris one day?
You just double dog dare me. That's what you need to do. Double dog dare me. I'll be a Metamorph spot.
A double dare. Well, but if I double dare you, doesn't that mean I have to compete as well? If I double dare you, doesn't that mean I have to compete as well?
Sort of. There. Looks like the match is set.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess it's us versus Phil Davis at Metamoris.
Don't pull me into this, Casper. He just dug your own grave. Now, Phil, you wear a sneaky backpack in a lot of your photos on Twitter, so you have to come clean. What's inside this mystery backpack, and what treats are hidden inside?
Oh. You know what? Honestly, I'm always ready to train. If somebody says, "Hey, Phil, let's go," boom, I got gloves, I got shorts right there. Wow, I'm ready to go. I'm always ready. Just in case anybody tries to test you, you just always got to be ready to go at any time.
Now, Phil, what entrance music can we expect to see you use at UFC 179, or is it a secret?
I usually go the secret route, but honestly, I haven't decided for sure. I have a 90% candidate, but then again, I don't really divulge that type of information just yet.
Well, just answer through a series of blinks or phone taps. Is it that song that goes, "Why can't we be friends"? Is that it?
Yeah, wink, wink.
Now, Phil, this is going to be a very complicated question, but have you seen the 1993 romantic comedy, Mr. Wonderful?
You know what? I saw bits and pieces of it, and it was actually pretty funny.
Well, we were thinking that perhaps that's where you got your inspiration for the nickname.
Be slightly off. I got the nickname from my cat. I had a cat in college named Mr. Wonderful.
Wow, that's great. All right, cool. Never expected that. I think final two questions. Prediction: who wins and how in the Jones-Cormier match?
Well, it still has to happen. I mean, at this point, honestly, I think Cormier wins. I honestly do. I think he's successfully gotten into the head of Jon Jones, and Jon does not like it, not one bit. So that right there gives him the edge.
Some very expert analysis. And finally, Phil, how will we see you beat Glover Teixeira at UFC 179 in Brazil? How's it going down?
Listen, I haven't let the fans down in Brazil yet, and it's not going to start in October. So, I don't know. It's going to be so spectacular. Every time I get in Rio, they call Rio the Wonderful City, and I am Mr. Wonderful. So there's no possible way I can disappoint like that.
You can be like the Undertaker at WrestleMania, and you can be like undefeated in Rio de Janeiro.
The streak,
guys. You can catch Phil on
exactly.
You can catch Phil Phil on Twitter at Mr. Wonderful and philmrwonderful.com. And of course, don't miss this fight. It's going to be crazy. Phil Davis taking on Glover Teixeira at UFC 179 on October the 25th or October 26th if you're here in Australia in the future. Phil, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Here's Wanderlei Silva, the ex-murderer, and you listen to me on Submission Radio.
Our next guest is from AKA. He's the head coach. He coaches such fighters as Cain Velasquez, Luke Rockhold, DC. He's coming on the show again. He's a returning guest. Ladies and gentlemen, on Submission Radio with Javier Mendez. Javier, welcome to Submission Radio.
Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys. Glad to be back on.
Oh, well, that's right. We're having you back on. It's a pleasure having you back on. A lot has happened since the last time you've been on the show, Javier. Let's get right into it off the top. The big news of the week has been Jon Jones having to pull out of his title fight with Daniel Cormier. I just want to find out from you, how did you find out about this, and what were your first thoughts when you heard about it?
Well, I found out about this through my social media guy, Cole Hatton, who was texting me regarding something, and then he goes, "Oh, snap." He goes, on his text message, he goes, "DC's fight's off." So I'm like, what? So I looked on MMA Fighting, and there it was. Jon Jones injured his meniscus and his ankle, and he had to postpone the fight till January 3rd. Sometimes it happens, you know. Coaches are the last to know. Sometimes the fighters are the last to know. It's just the way it is, you know. So that's how I found out.
Wow. Now, Daniel had issues with his knees before this fight. You know, he was willing to put aside his surgery to take on Jones. Now that Cormier will be, you know, able to fight at 100%, can you let us know how bad his knees really were going into this fight?
His knees weren't super bad, you know, but it's a pre-existing injury that he's had for years, you know, and you know, he had different opinions, you know. Some of the doctors say he must have surgery, other doctors were iffy, and other words were, well, no, you can rehab it, you know. So it's, you know, it was kind of one of those situations that he had to weigh out. What did he want to do? Does he want to have surgery? Does he not want to have surgery? Should he listen to this expert? Should he listen to that expert? So it's kind of one of those deals where, you know, I just figured, how long is it going to take you out if you have surgery? You know, it's going to be quite a while. I go, well, shoot, if it hasn't been bothering you too much, then why don't you just continue that way and then, you know, ride it out, you know? And then he thought that was the right idea too. So it wasn't a real super, you know, big problem. There was no need, you know?
So in terms of the surgery, Javier, will DC be going through that surgery now that he has some time before his fight with Jones, or is this something that he's still looking to delay till after he fights Jones in January?
He'd have to still look to delay this, because if he went into surgery, he won't even make the fight. You know, there's no way. He just has to make sure he keeps rehabbing it and doing the best he can with the best doctors that he's got available to make sure he's on track. And I believe he'll be fine. You know, I don't think there's going to be an issue, you know, come fight time. Will it be 100%? Of course not. But you know what? Based on it was before, he wasn't 100% going to any of his fights anyway. So we're still going to see the best Daniel Cormier we've ever seen, because he's going to need to be the best Daniel Cormier. Because to be the best Daniel, you have to be able to beat the best Jon Jones. So you're going to get the two best fighting each other, and the winner will prevail, and we'll see what happens. But I will personally believe that they will both be at their best.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We can't wait for that fight. And I was going to ask, you know, Daniel was originally a fill-in for Alexander Gustafsson. I mean, so in a way, he did take the fight on short notice. Do you think that it benefits Daniel now that he has a lot more time to train and make the weight and all those kinds of things?
Well, absolutely. Like when Daniel came up to me, he goes, "Hey, Hab, I got something to tell you." And I go, "What?" He goes, "I got the fight." I go, "What fight?" He goes, "The Jones fight." I go, okay. I go, "When?" And he goes, you know, September 27th. I go, could we have a little bit more time? He goes, what do you think we should do? I said, man, you got to take the fight. You know, you have to take the fight. You can't not take the fight. You know, that's ridiculous, because you'll never know what's going to happen. So I said, it's shorter than I wanted, but shoot, you got to take it. And he agreed. So, you know, we took the fight. So now that we have a longer training camp, it's better for us, you know, and I'm sure, you know, it may be better for him too, or maybe not, who knows, but it's definitely better for us.
Now, Harv, you know, one of the things coming out this week has been Alexander Gustafsson. You know, he began campaigning for the title shot. He sees himself as he was originally the person that was supposed to get the fight before he pulled out with an injury. What are your thoughts on Gustafsson trying to get his title shot back? Do you think that there's any possibility that Daniel might lose his title shot against Jones on January 3rd?
Well, for me, you know, Gustafsson, you know, the way I feel, he's going to have to fight. If he wants to fight for that title, he's going to have to fight Daniel. That's the way I view this, and that's the way our mentality's always been that way. I mean, how can I not come in with a guy who's never lost a frickin' round, who's 15-0, you know, who's just destroyed everybody? You know, how can I feel any different? Of course, I'm going to feel 100% in my heart that he's going to be the champ, and Gustafsson's just going to have to fight Daniel if he wants to try to get that title.
That's another great fight that's lined up for the fans and everyone alike. Now, in terms of Jon Jones' style, from a coach's standpoint, you know, the guy's looked so dominant, so good in his fights, but what flaws do you see that Daniel can exploit?
Well, we'll see. I mean, Daniel's a little faster than he is. I think Daniel hits a little harder than he does. The biggest obstacle is going to be that 5-finger, deal he sticks out all the time. Instead of closing his fist, he opens up his finger, and that's a motherfucker to deal with, because fighters have to deal with getting poked in the eyes, running into that all the time. So that's a major issue for me. And that Jones has time. I hope he has time to practice closing his hand when he sticks it out. It's okay to measure a fighter, but it's not okay to stick your hands out open like he does all the time. And you watch all these fights, he does it in every freaking fight. It's just unbelievable how many times he does it. And with Glover, he poked him in the eye because Glover came in on it and got poked in the eye. So think about it. The next time on, Glover thinking about coming in, he's thinking about getting poked in the eye because he got open fingers out there. That's a very dangerous tool. I think he should be warned before the fight. I think he should be warned during the fight, and I think he should get points taken away if he continues to do it because, I even seen John McCarthy warn him about don't open your hands. But he's not been warned enough. He does it way more than I've seen anybody ever do. I personally feel he's such a great fighter. He is pound for pound the best fighter in the world. Why does he need to do it? He doesn't need to do that, and he says it's an old habit and it's not intentional. Well, I believe him, but please work on it. Please work on correcting that because, I would hate a fight of this magnitude to be ended because of an accidental eye poke and because he has a habit of doing that. That would be ridiculous, All these people spending good money to watch a great fight and then that could end because of an eye poke. I think he needs to work on that.
Yeah, that will be a really dark day for the UFC if that's the way the fight ended. But I was gonna ask you, Javier, in terms of style, a lot of opponents, they kind of had trouble with Jones's distance, not just because of his reach, but, if you stay on the outside, he picks you apart. If they come in on the inside, there's his clinch game. But in terms of Daniel, obviously Daniel Cormier's got an amazing clinch. He's an Olympic-level wrestler. Do you think that's going to be, I don't want to use the word easier, but, he has less to worry about because he can get in closer, and, if they do get in the clinch, it's going to be Daniel's world just as much as it is Jones's, if not more?
Well, I think it's going to be more Daniel's world, more so in the clinch, because Daniel is the higher level wrestler, and I believe in my heart, based on what I've seen him do to everybody else, I don't see Jon Jones being any different. On the outside, it's going to be Jones's world because he is without a doubt pound for pound the greatest fighter right now, no doubt, and he uses all his tools, so diverse in everything, all his attacks. I mean, he's incredible to watch. I mean, and the guy has got the fighting spirit. He's got everything. I mean, I can't knock him on how great he is because he's that great. The only issues I had is the eye poke. That's for sure an issue with me. And then, of course, I'm not sure if going for the knees all the time because he goes for the knees so damn much. Side kick to the knee all the time. I don't know if that's such a good sportsmanship. I guess it's legal, so he's within the rules. But I wish they would outlaw that too, because he's so good at it now that one good place shot at one point is going to end the fighter's career.
Well, Javier, sorry, continue.
Well, like I said, he's a great fighter, and Daniel's advantages I believe are going to be in the clinch, on the ground, and Jones's ability. I think on top, Jones is going to have the advantages, and I think standing, Jones is going to have the advantages. But I don't think it's going to be as easy as he thinks it is, because Daniel is very tricky, So you may be shocked to see that he's not doing as well as he thinks he's doing on the stand-up with Daniel. Daniel ain't no joke.
And, Javi, just on some of the unorthodox techniques that Jones does, we had Bas Rutten on the show, and he brought up an interesting point where he said, I doubt that Jon Jones pokes his training opponents in the eye when he trains with them. So he'd pull his hands back, and I doubt that he, poke guys in the eyes. And the same thing goes with some of these unorthodox techniques. We doubt that he's throwing these knee shots to his training partners when he's getting ready to fight. So one of the things, that Jones uses as an excuse that you mentioned is his hand is out there when opponents come in. But, surely his hand isn't out there when he's training. Otherwise, a lot of his training partners would have, eye injuries by now. Isn't that right?
Yeah, if he does the little gloves and if he practices that with his buddies, the sparring partners, yeah. But if he's using the 16-ounce gloves, then no, it's not a big deal. You know, it's a great measuring tool, but it's just close your hands. That's all I ask. Put it out there, whatever, but close your hands.
Now, I wanted to ask you also, Javier, the two are recently involved in a bit of a scuffle at a media day. Given the animosity between the two, were you surprised at all?
No, not at all, because they've been brewing for a while. You know, it started a few years ago, you know, with Jones. You know, I guess I don't think it was meant as a disrespect, but I think it was taken as that, and so one thing led to another, and so now here we are, and it's legit. They have a legit dislike for each other. So one tit, one tat. You know, you do this, I do that. You do this, I do that. So they're going back and forth. And one thing is, you know, when you got two alpha males, and these are two king of the jungle alpha males, what do you think is going to happen? They're not going to give in. They're not. They're just not. These are the king of the jungles. Both of these guys, and there's just no way one's going to give over the other. They're not. They're not. They're both used to winning, and winning they do. You know, and in MMA they're both undefeated. You know, so the only difference between them is one's got the strap, and that's pretty much it. You know, but as far as them being champions, they're both champions, and they both have really outclassed everybody. Everybody. You know, you look at all Daniel's fights, he's outclassed everybody. Look at Jon, he outclassed everybody in a different way, but they still both outclassed all their opposition.
You know, Harvey, it was an amazing promotional tool. Everybody saw it. It was all over the world. It was here in Australia. It was on every major news website. From that perspective, you know, Daniel Cormier mentioned, you know, that he was willing to go into his fight with his knee injury. It's a shame that Jones had to pull out. Do you think it's a shame that Jones pulled out sort of at the apex of this promotional height of this fight? And do you think it'll take anything away from the fight as it's sort of delayed till January 3rd, you know, with the hype getting so high now, sort of having to be dragged out till January?
I think personally, because these two guys actually have that kind of animosity right now towards each other, that I don't think it's going to matter. I think come closer to the fight, you're going to see it flare back up, and that's just going to add more fuel to the fire. I think that what they already accomplished, they're going to reuse, and then there's going to be new stuff that's going to come up that they're going to be doing to each other. I guarantee you. I mean, I just that little simple thing I saw just the other day that I didn't know was happening between Luke Rockhold, where he goes out there and he does the eye poke protection thing, and they're practicing and trying to lurk at Daniel and get him prepared for the eye poke. And that was funny as hell, you know. So they're going to do more like that. And you think that Jon is going to stop at you know, that happening to him and him not coming back? Trust me, he's coming back. He's going to come back, and when he's going to do his thing, he's going to come back at Daniel. When have we seen Jon Jones not come back at somebody that's kind of made fun of him or attacked him? He always comes back, and he comes back with something pretty good or something pretty stupid. But regardless, he comes back.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Luke Rockhold joking about Jones' eye pokes. Is funnily enough, that was on our show when we interviewed Luke Rockhold last week. And we wanted to chat to you about Luke as well, because when he was on the show last week, he did talk about potential opponents and fights with, you know, Vitor Belfort, Michael Bisping, Lyoto Machida. He even said that he'd be down to fight Vanderlei. Who do you think is a good fight for Luke Rockhold next?
Well, honestly, I've always believed the best fight for Luke Rockhold is the one Luke Rockhold wants most, because that's when he gets fired up. That's when he's at his best. Is when with the fight that he wants most, and so to me it's up in the air. You know, if he's got his sights set on Bisping, then it's Bisping. If it happens to be Chris Weidman, if he gets an opportunity, then it's Chris. If it's Belfort, it's Belfort. You know, but I think at one time or another he's gonna want to fight Belfort again, regardless, whether you know it's now or after he gets the title shot, or if he wins the title shot, which I am very confident that I believe he will. You know, he's improved so much, and people are sleeping on him a little bit, but not as much now, because he's shown within the last two fights what he can really do. And even though the opposition wasn't as high, they were still pretty high. And to do what he did to them that no one else has done to them, it better wake people up that this kid's for real, and you better take him serious. And he's coming. You know, Luke Rockhold's coming, and I don't see him not having that belt around his waist. I really do see it. You know, he's that good.
Yeah, I think people are definitely sleeping on Luke Rockhold a bit, and I think that could change in his next fight. And when last week he was very explicit in saying that he wants Vitor next. He wants it more than anything in the world. Bisping was a close second, but it was mainly Vitor. Now I wanted to get your thoughts on not only how that fight would go, but just in general. You know, Vitor Belfort, he's had the controversy about PEDs. Do you think that when he returns to the cage, he'll be able to keep the same standard in skill now that he's TRT free?
Oh, absolutely not. I don't care what anybody says. He's not gonna be able to maintain that. They never do. And anybody that says, oh, I'm the same, I'm stronger, you're bullshit. You're not. Where everyone that's been on the PEDs, I've been in this business, 30-something years. I've seen it all. And trust me, they're not stronger. They're not stronger. They're not stronger. Maybe the one thing they can say is, my cardio's better, but you're not stronger. You're not faster. You're not as aggressive. No. I mean, there's a reason why these kids get on that stuff. There's a reason why they get on it. And there's a reason why they destroy people. If you remember the early UFC days, look at what was going on then. Those guys were monsters, were destroying everybody. The only thing that killed them was what? Cardio. Cardio. Someone can outlast them on the cardio. Then that's where they eventually started getting tired. But before that, man, it's like the guys were demolishing people.
And in terms of, would it be safe to say that you think Luke Rockhold beats Vitor pretty handily?
No, I don't think anybody beats Vitor very handily. He's a great fighter. No. I will say he won't be the same, but that doesn't mean he won't be a great fighter. He's still a great fighter. He just won't be as great.
And in terms of
no one's gonna beat Vitor about handily. Nobody. I don't believe anybody can do that to him.
Well, speaking of somebody who's up to the task, Chris Weidman's going to be versing him next. How do you see the fight between Vitor and Chris playing out in their title match?
I see Chris coming in at him, standing with him, and we're putting the pressure on him. And if a takedown presents itself, I see Chris going for it. But I see Chris pressuring him, and I believe 100%. Because he's got that explosive power, but if it plays out the way I'm thinking, Chris is going to put pressure on him, and then as the rounds go, I think Vitor's going to get tired, and I think he's going to get him.
Now, Javier, Jon Fitch is someone who's been a staple at AKA pretty much forever, and now with back-to-back wins, how's Jon looking at training?
He's looking great. Jon Fitch is one of those guys that I have just nothing but praise for that guy. He's a great human being, and he's a great leader. And and when he's down, he knows how to pick himself back up. He's just a great human being. That guy. He's an all-around great dad. Great husband. Man, I got nothing but praise for him. That's all I've ever had for him. Nothing but respect and praise. How he does everything.
Now, as far as the fight fans going, the fight everybody wants to see, and World Series of Fighting has a nice little fight that people really want to see, and that's Jon Fitch and Husama Palhares for the welterweight title. When the fight comes together, both guys are dangerous. How do you see the fight playing out between the two?
Not quite sure, because Palhares is super strong, and when there's nobody better at attacking legs like he does, no one in MMA is better than that guy. So he's a very dangerous guy. So we'll see what happens. The only thing about Palhares that I've seen in the past is that he sometimes shows up, he sometimes doesn't show up. So we'll see which guy shows up. And we'll see what happens. If you recall with Alan Belcher was able to defend against his heel hook and all his knee attacks, and then Alan gave it back to him, and then so it broke him. So I see the fight going similar like that. I see Fitch potentially doing the same thing, or who knows? Palhares might just get it. Who knows? It's hard to say. It's one thing for sure. That's going to be their plan. That's always been his plan. And I mean, and the only concern I have with that guy is when he gets that move, if he does get it, is that they please let go when someone taps, because he still has a tendency to hold on a little bit. If it wasn't for the referee stepping in and grabbing him, he wouldn't have let go once the fighter tapped.
Absolutely, and it's such a deadly...
I'm a little bit of concern. Yeah, I'm a little concerned about that for Fitch because of that. And like I said, we yet to see if he's going to be able to get Fitch there. You know, Fitch is a seasoned veteran. He's been through it all. So, we get to see if he can do that. But I'm just saying, my big concern is that, hopefully we'll never have that concern because we won't get him there. But just in case,
Absolutely, such a deadly move, and definitely something that Usman needs to be very careful about. Now, Javier, another one of your fighters, Josh Thompson, had a difficult fight against Bobby Green. What was your opinion on Josh's performance? It seemed like Josh had a little bit of trouble getting off and implementing his game plan in the fight till the later rounds.
That is a tough fight for him. He went from fighting a southpaw to a right-handed guy in the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks or so, and it kind of changed everything. And so I think that he didn't adjust the way he needed to. I personally thought he won the fight, but I'm being biased, of course, because, I thought he won 1 and 2, but, 1 was close. So I thought he won. And the problem was I didn't think he was coming forward enough. And I think Bobby, playing the act like it didn't hurt, played on the judges' minds, and I think he did a great job of doing that. Because every time Josh would connect, he'd laugh, nah, it didn't hurt, and Bobby was the aggressor. So the judges, it depends on what the judges see. Did they play into the aggressive guy that says, "Oh, you ain't hurt me," and apparently they did because he won.
And after Josh's long layoff, would you like to see him back in the cage as soon as possible to avoid the ring rust?
I think he should get back in the cage as soon as possible. This fight didn't prove to me that he's still not one of the best. He's still one of the best, and it just proved that he had an off night. But in the off night, it still was a split decision, a little controversial, and it just means that he's one fight away from, again, being in a title contention. All he needs is one good win, and there you go. Here's your title shot again. I see that happening to him because his next fight, who's it going to be? It's going to be against a top 10 guy, And if he wins that fight, then it could very well be, that here he goes. He fights for a title. I mean, so all those guys within the top 10 are within one fight away, one good fight away.
And how are Josh's spirits doing after that fight? Is he motivated to get back in there and show people what he's made of? Or is he feeling a little bit down after that decision?
No, he's motivated to come back, and he's not talking retirement. He didn't talk retirement before this fight. He said no, he's going to hang in there and continue. So he had a little bit of injuries, and he's little nagging injuries, but he's back training. Yesterday, and so no, he's back. He's back.
That's good. That's exactly what I like to hear. Speaking of another guy who's coming back and who had some injuries, Cain Velasquez is slated to fight Fabrizio Verdum on November the 15th at UFC 180. How's training going for Cain for Fabrizio Verdum?
Cain's going great. He's doing fantastic. He's on track. We started an Ultimate Fighter while we were filming Ultimate Fighter. That's when I first started training him over there, and his timing's coming back, everything's coming back. So, I'm expecting, a great fight, and I think the Ultimate Fighter is going to be a huge hit in Latin America. It's going to be a huge hit. I think that they got the two perfect guys to springboard MMA into Latin America, with Fabricio being able to speak fluent Spanish as he does, and Cain. And Fabricio's Spanish is better than Cain. Actually, Fabricio's Spanish is better than all of us. He made us look silly. But I think the show is going to create a big interest in that fight, and I think the fight's going to be a blockbuster event. November 15th is going to be huge in Mexico. And I think Cain, we're going to Mexico, I believe, at the end of this month to do some kind of, he's going to go do some kind of press or something, so I have to go train him while he's there.
And, Cain is, such a great guy. I'm a little bit jealous for everybody over there being able to see a different side of Cain in The Ultimate Fighter. And, as a great coach yourself, Javier, what's it like seeing Cain, really embrace the position of a head coach in The Ultimate Fighter? What's it like seeing him, command a team of troops in a show like that?
You know what? It was incredible. I was there to kind of mentor him and let him take control and lead, you know. So I did little things there, like I'll give you, for instance, you know, we'd go the day before the weigh-ins, you know, we go to the house, the fighter house, to check on the kids to make sure that they're okay, to make sure they're making weight. And you know, Cain goes, yeah, let's do that. So you know, then all of a sudden the next kid's going to do the same thing. So I said to him, hey, do you think it's fair that we do it for him and not the other? If we do it for this guy, we got to do it for every one of these kids. And sure enough, he did it for every single one of those kids. And I'll even tell you the bad part about me, Mr. Mentor. Here I'm telling them, hey, you know, I think you should do it for all the kids. So he calls me up and goes, hey, let's go. We're gonna go see which one called for the weigh-ins. I go, but we already know he's gonna be on weight. He goes, so we still got to go support just like we've been doing. And I'm like, well, and it's because my gambling fever took effect on me. And I'm like, you really need me to go? he goes, well, no, you don't have to go. But I go, it'd be nice if you're there. I go, well, if I don't have to go, then no, you know, and next you know, he still does it, and I go gambling, of course.
That's hilarious. So just to be safe, it was safe to assume you're the assistant coach on the season, correct?
Yes, I'm the assistant coach. He's the head coach, and it was all about him and how he ran it. It was he ran it his way. We just took instructions from him. If there was something that was needed to discuss, I would just say little things to him. But you know, I didn't really say too much to him because he took natural to it. Because you know, one thing he does, he cares about the kids. He loves teaching. So it was a natural fit for him. And if he ever wanted to be a coach after he was done fighting, he could be a great one.
And, you know, just speaking of the kids, you know, there's the list released of the fighters who are going to be a part of the show. But, you know, just from your perspective, watching some of these kids train and fight, what do we have to look forward to when, you know, we turn on the translated version here in Australia of The Ultimate Fighter?
Well, I think what you can look forward to is that, you know, all these kids are on the show. They're all fighters. Every single one of them. They ain't got no quit in them. They got no backward pedal on either one. All of them, both teams. They're just come a blazing, a gunslinging, and one of us is gonna die type attitude, you know. And they do that throughout the whole damn show. Those kids, they come for war, you know. They're used to that, and their mentality is such as that I'm a warrior, and you know, if you're gonna take me out, you're gonna have to take me out, but I'm coming. And it shows throughout the whole show. It's an incredible show. Everybody did great. You know, it was just a bunch of warriors on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody knows that Latinos have heart. Now, last time you were on the show, Javier, you know, we're talking about the Cain Velasquez Verdum matchup. You know, you were talking about how he's a tricky opponent, but Cain, you know, he's gonna beat him decisively. What challenges will be present to Cain in this fight, in your opinion, and how do you think they match up?
Well, I think with Fabricio, we have to be worried about every single thing. We have to worry about kicks, knees, punches, elbows. The only area that we're not going to be as concerned with is wrestling. He can practice his wrestling all he wants. You know, he doesn't have enough time to be competitive in that area. So we have to respect him in every area, and we definitely have to give him the utmost respect on the ground, because he could very well be, and probably is, the best heavyweight jiu-jitsu player on the ground. So we have to give him his credit there, and of course we'll probably have to be there too. It's not going to be like we're not, but we have to give his dues and his respect. You know, he's going to be dangerous everywhere but the wrestling.
And just quickly, I wanted to follow up that with, you know, I don't want to talk too many game plans, because obviously you guys save that for fight day, but people are kind of debating, like, you know, is Cain going to stand and bang with Fabricio Verdum, or is he still going to be able to use his wrestling? So I'm curious, you know, as far as the plan, will Cain be utilizing a lot of his wrestling and going to the ground with the dangerous Fabricio Verdum?
Well, if you watched all of Cain's fights, with the exception of Nogueira, he's utilized his wrestling in every one of them. So, you know, unless Fabricio gets knocked out, you know, or Cain gets knocked out, which ain't gonna happen, you know, then I see him using his wrestling. He's used it in every fight, you know, and I don't see this one being any different. You know, unless it's taken out early.
Absolutely, and has it been a little bit strange for Cain, being able to see his opponent and work with him on the Ultimate Fighter, day in and day out? Has it been a bit of a strange experience for you guys, sort of working hand in hand with somebody that you're going to have to fight at UFC 180?
No. Fabrizio's a game competitor on a competitor level, team versus team. He was as game as they come, and respect that about him. But from a fighting perspective, I mean, they're both very professional, and they're both gentlemen. So there was no animosity. There was no, I can't wait to get you in the cage type thing. No, it's Cain wants to keep his title. Fabricio wants his title, and that was it. But there was no, in between, there was no digs and jabs about anything. Not from them two. If there was any digs and jabs, it was other people, but it wasn't those two creating that type of stuff.
And also wanted to ask you, Javier, before we do the Submission Radio tap out round with you, I also wanted to ask you, it's been well documented what you did for BJ Penn as a striking coach. What did you think of his striking in the latest fight against Frankie Edgar? And do you think, what was the weight cut down to featherweight right for him?
I TiVo'd the fight, and then I found out he lost, so I fast-forwarded. The very first thing that I thought was different is why was he standing the way he was at the beginning? That threw me off. I didn't understand that. It was like he was inviting Frankie to take him down. I don't know if that was the right game plan. I don't know if that was the plan they planned on doing, but I didn't think that was, because you're giving away rounds the way he was. If Frankie didn't take him down, then you're going to get outscored, and so I thought that was odd. I didn't know why he did that. And as far as the weight cut, I don't really know, because I wasn't present, so I don't know how strong he felt or how strong he didn't feel. So I'm not sure if that was the issue, as so much as the strategy going into the fight and then getting punched. Because a lot of times you can be in the best shape of your life, but when you get in there and you're getting punched, it takes your positioning away from you. And any fighter will tell you that's in great shape. They go in there and all of a sudden they get hit with some good shots. All of a sudden they're like on Queer Street wondering, where the hell am I? Oh my God, how come I'm tired? Well, you're taking a beating. Look at all the boxing matches you guys will watch. The guy's doing great. He gets hit with a good shot. He goes down, and where is he at?
Absolutely. The famous quote goes, everybody has a game plan until they get punched in the face, and certainly a very strange game plan from BJ Penn. Now, Javier, before we jump to the tap-out round, we have a couple of fan questions for you, so I'll quickly jump into it. Big Gulp would like to know, do you frequent any MMA forums, such as Sherdog, MMA Underground, and do you have a sneaky alias that you post under?
No, I don't have a sneaky alias, and I always look at Sherdog, MMA Fighting, Bloody Elbow, MMA Weekly, the MMA.tv, the forum. I've been doing it for years. It's like an old habit that doesn't quit. I still do it on a daily basis. So I'm up to date. I'm up to date on everything. I've never commented on there. I was going to at one point, but it wasn't going to be an alias. It was going to be me.
Hey.
And then I just figured, you know what? I think it would be a good idea, because no matter what good I say, there's always going to be someone saying something bad, because it doesn't matter. You could be Mother Teresa, and someone's going to say something bad about you. And I just rather not get involved in that. I've seen way too much of that.
Yeah,
so, yes, but I 100% frequent it all the time.
It can be a difficult process on the forums. No matter what you say, can be used against you. So good plan there, Javier.
Now, Shonuff, funnily enough, one of the moderators from the Sherdog forums, you wanted to know what happened with the AKA TV show Fight Factory. Where's season 2 of, in his words, one of the best MMA TV programming that's ever been made?
I agree. I thought it was a great program, but the unfortunate thing, it was in the wrong station. It was a women's network. Nuvo was a women's network, and their whole concept was there. And I think they called us up to renew it. I don't know what happened between the management and them, but it didn't matter, because we couldn't have done it anyways, because when we did The Ultimate Fighter, we're banned for 1 year from doing any kind of reality show. So they did want to redo it, and but I don't know. I don't know what happened. I agree. I think it was well made. Really, really well made.
Yeah, a great show. Now, Javier, we have the tap it round for you. As you know, as a returning guest, this is the one of the best things in MMA radio today. GQ Magazine rated it as the top 5,000 sexiest radio segments in the world. And we're going to kick it off basically. First thing that comes to your mind as we throw these questions at you. Are you ready?
Can I, can I plug in my AKA Thailand?
Of course you can.
Before we begin?
Of course.
Of course.
Well, I just, for people that want to have a great vacation, we have AKA Thailand with Mike Swick. And, it's a Phuket, if people want to have a great Thai experience, MMA, great training, the whole bit, be sure to check out MMA Thailand, at Twitter account at AKA Thailand. And it's a great place to go. It's a beautiful island. It's a 30 by 40 mile island, and it's great for Muay Thai, great for vacation, great for MMA. Visit AKA Thailand.
Absolutely, and we'll throw down the link as well. We'll make sure to let people know about it. Phuket, a great place to go where a lot of Aussies frequent, so absolutely something everyone needs to check out. But now, Javier, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. What's the strangest experience you've had as an MMA coach?
Strangest experience, actually when I'm trying to break up a fight between Luke Rockhold and Daniel Cormier, and I stepped in, and Daniel Cormier squarely hits me with the left hook in the face, and had red in his eyes for Luke, that he didn't even apologize till later. He hits me by accident with the knee to the face while I was working knee drills with him, and then he's so apologetic. That's to be strangest. How can you hit me with the left hook with bad intentions and not say nothing to me, but then turn around and hit me with an accidental knee, and then you're so apologetic like you just hurt your dad?
Now, Javier, we know you're a great striker, but what's your grappling game like?
None, non-existent. I get sick just spinning. So I've tried the grappling, and I did it with Mike Swain the very first time, and I rolled. He had me do a row and one row, and I go, Mike, I can't roll. And he goes, yo, no, you're getting the hang of it. I go, no, bro, you don't understand. I get sick. I can't do any of this stuff. So, anyways, long story short, I got so sick that day. As soon as I got home, I threw up on the driveway to my house. It's so bad. For the whole day, I'm messed up. So, unfortunately for me, there is no MMA grappling for me.
We won't be able to see Javier and Matamoros, unfortunately. Now, Javier,
unfortunately not.
What technique do you think MMA athletes of tomorrow will be focusing on in 20 years' time?
What technique?
Yeah,
it could be a technique or a style or a number of techniques.
I think as everybody keeps getting better, I think they're going to start using a lot of, on the stand-up, they're going to use a lot of knees, because they're going to be so good wrestlers. It's going to be hard to take down. The punching is going to be difficult. They're going to learn to cover up like turtles do in the Thai boxing world, and I think knees are going to be very important.
You know what? Let me just ask a quick question in between, Javier. As far as knees go, do you think that that's something that should be legalized on the ground?
I think the rules should stay the way the rules are now. I think they're fine. I think adding more potential danger to the ground than what's already there, I think it's not good.
Okay. Back to the Tapo round. In your opinion, what's the best fighting movie ever, Javier?
For me, Enter the Dragon.
Yes.
Not a Rocky man. Okay, now, do you still keep in touch with tough veteran Bobby Southworth, and how's he going?
I do keep in touch with Bobby Southworth. He has an AKA Texas. We keep in touch. He's doing good. He's running his gym over there, and him and his wife and his kid. Yeah, he's doing good.
Nice. Now, Javier, do you think MMA will ever be an Olympic sport?
I don't know. I don't know. It's possible with the way it is mainstream now. It's possible it could be Olympic sport, but I don't know if any MMA organization is lobbying it for it to be Olympic sport. I could see it easily becoming an Olympic sport because the whole world's taking participation in it. But I think when the UFC decides they want it to be an Olympic sport, that's when I think it'll be an Olympic sport. But I don't think their focus is on that at the present time.
Now, you mentioned you got a couple of hits from DC. As a former champion yourself, when watching some of your fighters train, do you ever wish you could step back in the ring for at least one real competitive round?
No, I never. No, if there was anything I regret when I was fighting, is that I should have boxed instead of kickboxing.
Okay.
That's my only thing. I should have been a boxer because I would have made money.
Yeah. Now, Javier, what's the #1 show that the Mendez family watch when it's time to relax at home?
Well, one of my favorite shows is Game of Thrones.
Oh no!
I love Game of Thrones.
I never got that show, but that's okay. Now, Javier, who's the hardest hitter that you've had a chance to hold mitts for?
In my lifetime or just MMA?
Well,
let's go.
Let's do both.
Yeah, let's do both. This is interesting.
And in my lifetime, the hardest hitter was a little 135er professional boxer named Jerry Ferrillo.
Wow.
He, out of everybody, pound for pound, hit the hardest out of everybody. Outside of that, the next one that was an extremely hard hitter for his size. Oh man, there's a couple. Gabe Carrasco's. He's one of my lightweights. He hits pretty freaking hard.
All right, we'll have to look out for him. Also, I wanted to get your thoughts. Frank Shamrock's Tough Love on Gym Rescue. Have you seen the show, and what do you think about it?
I've seen the show. I love the Frank's bad guy role and Randy's good guy role, and how they just come in and they attack them. I love the show. The concept, I don't know if I love the concept so much, but I love their interaction, both of those guys, the good guy, bad guy. I thought it was pretty good. So it was entertaining for me.
I feel like Javier Mendez should have gone around to gyms and let people know how they could have fixed them up. I think you would have had a wealth of knowledge as well, and not quite as much yelling. And now finally, Javier, what would you say to your younger self if you went back in time to 1978 when you first started martial arts, studying Tang Soo Do, and tell yourself that one day it would lead to such an amazing career?
Well, if I was going to say something to myself, I would have said, don't do Tang Soo Do, get in the boxing gym, get into judo and jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
If I had to go back then, I'm going to be real. And then when Thai boxing came around, I did get involved with Thai boxing when it came to our area, but in '78 we didn't have any Thai boxing, but we had boxing, and we had jiu-jitsu now, but we had judo. So I would have said, get in that and get in wrestling the whole bit. I wouldn't have been involved with martial arts.
Yeah, I can't wait till they build those time machines. Now, Javier, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, as always. Very insightful. And for the fans, you can follow Javier on Twitter at AKA Harv, that's AKA JAV, and get more information about AKA at www.akakickbox.com. It's a fantastic gym up there in San Diego. And of course, for any Aussies, if San Diego is a little bit too far for you, just head down to AKA Thailand, which is in Phuket, another lovely destination, and headed by the also lovely and quick Mike Swick. Javier, absolute pleasure having you on the show.
All right, thank you guys. Thanks for having me on. And it's AK San Jose, by the way, not San Diego.
Oh, sorry, San Jose. Sorry, I get them confused. San Jose, that's what I meant. Yeah.
That's okay.
Don't go up to San Diego looking for AK because you won't find them. You know, where in the world is Carmen, San Diego? That's a great game as well. Now, speaking of great things, the UFC Fight Night Beta versus OSP card, you know, it's fresh. It just finished very, very recently, and me and Cass are going to break it down for you.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Kicking off the main card, you had Thiago Tavares in his featherweight debut defeating Robbie Peralta. He basically choked out Robbie in the first round, 4 minutes and 27 seconds. A nice back and forth. Thiago Tavares looking very, very focused. Robbie Peralta, you know, not doing the greatest. He's had very mixed success in the UFC so far. His last fight, actually, he won against Honey Jason and then Esteban Payan, but he lost to Akira Korasani. And we see it a lot of times with guys when they move down a division. I don't know what it is. It's like an extra pep in their step. I don't know whether they still have the strength from their previous division or what it is, or that career resurgence. But we definitely saw it tonight in Thiago Tavares. And, you know, there was a lot of back and forth on the ground. He was really working for that rear naked choke. He was mixing it up. And I think it was Kenny Florin who said, you know, the lesser of two evils, or pick your poison. You know, he had Robbie Peralta flattened out, and it was either, you know, get TKO, have him rain punches on you, or get submitted with the rear naked choke. And in this case, it was the rear naked choke. So good win for Thiago Tavares. It's unfortunate for Robbie Peralta, but I'm sure we'll see him again. He's only one in the loss column thus far in a row, and 2 altogether in the UFC. So Robbie Peralta 2-2, Thiago Tavares possibly a career resurgence in the 145-pound division.
That's right. You know, and the translator, Casper believes he looks like Fit Finlay from the WWE. I have this whole Nick Nolte angle that I'm going with. Whoever you think he looks like, he's definitely a character. And I always wonder where they get these translators from, because they're never just those general translators he'd see. There's always a bit of something going on in the background there. So
and there's that really big Brazilian translator, but he looks really Russian. I'm always expecting him to translate in the incorrect language.
Yeah, and then there's the guy that always translates all the Shogun stuff. And, yeah, but anyway, great translator. Next fight was Sean Jordan versus Jack May. You know, Sean Jordan has had a couple of tough fights recently. He lost. Sean Jordan lost to Matt Mitrione by KO. He lost to Gabriel Gonzaga by KO. You know, Sean Jordan, a very athletic man coming from the Jackson Winklejohn camp. You know, and Jack May I say Jack May, you know, he was a very, very tall guy. Looked like, you know, he had great reach, great size on him. But watching this fight, you know, Jack just couldn't utilize his reach and his size, much like Stefan Struve. Much like Stefan Struve, Jack, you know, couldn't utilize his reach in parts of the fight where he really should have. You know, he was winning the fight in certain sections of the rounds, but Sean Jordan really came back and showed his heart and determination. I was really impressed by Sean Jordan. Cass, what did you think about this fight?
Yeah, you know, Sean Jordan, he's a guy, he's going through that heavyweight division, and it is a really thin division, so in a sense, they're really looking for the next big star. They're looking for talent, and they're really experimenting. You know, you see guys coming into the UFC heavyweight division. They may not necessarily last long because the UFC, they need people. They need people really badly. And Sean Jordan, you know, he's had mixed results. Like you said, tough outing. The last 2 fights, he lost by, he got knocked out by Matt Mitrione, got knocked out by Gabriel Gonzaga. 2 guys with far more experience. And Sean Jordan, he's a guy, he doesn't really come from that mixed martial arts background. He's I believe ex-NFL player, or not NFL, but he's an American football player. He's been training with Jackson's Winklejohn's camp, and you know, tremendous show of heart, because he was in some real trouble there. Jack May, he's gotten in a lot better shape than he used to be before he entered the UFC. He's trimmed down a lot, better shape, really tall, really long limbs. Still, what's crazy is at 6'8", he still doesn't have the limbs that Jon Jones does at 6'4". But you know, he hits really hard, and he got Sean Jordan. He tagged him with a lot of big shots, and Sean Jordan, he never gave up. He kept firing back. Anytime he'd be pushed against the cage, and Jack May would pressure him and hit him with big punches. You know, there was a few times when it looked like Sean Jordan was going to go down, but he'd basically cover up, and then he'd fire back with his own punches. So really impressive. And in the end, you know, getting that TKO, incredibly impressive show of heart. And like we tweeted out to Sean Jordan, more heart than the dude from Indiana Jones.
That's right. Well put, Casper. Well put. And you know what? It was great to see Sean pick up that win. You know, he's such an athletic guy, and you know, hopefully we'll be able to see Sean, you know, have a few more huge contests in the heavyweight division. Because, like you said, you know, there's not that many big name fighters in the heavyweight division. So I think definitely a great thing for the UFC to see Sean come out on top in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up was Seth Baczynski, Polish Pistola, against Alan Jabuan, who is obviously a former model, but very good in the Muay Thai, and trains with Eddie Bravo and 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and I believe he's a brown belt. Now, it's no secret, you know, I'm Polish. Seth Baczynski's Polish. Obviously, I had to go for Polish Pistola. And not only that, but Seth Baczynski puts on really entertaining fights. He had an absolutely awesome war against Thiago Alves in his last outing. Didn't quite make it. I really thought this was going to be a lot more competitive. But Alan's striking was just too much for Seth Baczynski, and unfortunately, Seth got knocked out in the first round at 4 minutes 23. But it's a nice big start for Alan, and a nice big welterweight added to the UFC's division. What did you think of this fight, Dennis?
Well, you know, this is another one of those fights where Seth was dominating the fight. You know, I thought Seth was going to destroy Allen. There were parts where I thought it was almost over. And seeing Allen come back like that and beat Seth, I think it was pretty crazy. And I think it kicked off what was officially dubbed for me up until the main event, the night of the comebacks. You know, there was a lot of comebacks. Sean Jordan. We were talking about Allen now. Tim Boetsch later on. So I thought it was
even Ross Pearson, you could say.
Yeah, even Ross Pearson, you could say. So I thought this card was really good. I thought, wow, this card could be one of the better fight nights I've seen in a long time. It's coming along very, very nicely at this point. And, you know, I felt bad for Seth because Seth goes in there and puts on such exciting fights, but maybe to his own detriment, you know. He goes in there, he bangs hard, but, you know, he left a small gap, and, you know, Allen really capitalized on it. What a debut for Allen. You know, he admitted that Seth had him on the ropes in that fight. And, you know, I want to see Seth back, and I want to see him, you know, in that octagon again. He's a very exciting fighter, like you said.
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere unless he really drops like multiple fights in a row. I don't think the UFC are going to get rid of him. Real veteran, coming obviously from Ultimate Fighter Season 11. And congratulations to Allen, you know, former model, Muay Thai machine. He was just the more crisper man, and a great comeback from him as well. So I was going to say this was going to be the fight of the night had it not ended in the first round. Next up, obviously, in the middleweight division, you had Tim Boetsch against Brad Tavares. This is a really interesting one. Dennis, what did you think of this fight coming into this fight before it even started, about the matchup?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I thought Tim Boetsch was going to take this one. I thought he would dominate Tavares in the clinch up against the fence. I thought he'd use his barbarian strength and possibly throw Tavares. You know, I like Brad Tavares, but you know, I never really got on the Brad Tavares bandwagon. It went past my house, and I was in the Johns. So it was definitely something that I thought would happen. Obviously, what unfolded was something completely different. What did you think prior to the fightcast?
I actually really thought Brad Tavares was going to take this one. I didn't think Tim Boetsch's strength was going to be a factor. Excuse me. Tim Boetsch, he hasn't really looked the greatest. He almost looked like he was on the downswing of his career. Meanwhile, Brad Tavares, he's got crisp striking, he's got finishing power, and he's got some of the best takedown defense in the middleweight division. The only person who really exploited his lack of wrestling, I wouldn't say lack of wrestling, but the only person who really took him down and make him look like he couldn't wrestle was Yoel Romero. And I mean, you know what, silver Olympic medalist wrestler, so it's not really surprising there. But up until then, he was on a nice, good win streak. I think he won about 5 fights in a row, and I thought this is really going to be Brad Tavares' comeback fight, and he was winning. Tim Boetsch did not look good in that fight at the start. Brad Tavares looked like he had all the control. Coming to round 2 was more of the same. And I think Brad, he got caught, you know. Got to be happy for Tim Boetsch. I mean, being in Maine, his home state of where he was born. You know, Tim Silva may not have been there, but Tim Boetsch certainly was. And a great comeback. The only shame about this fight was that Joe Rogan wasn't commentating, so he could go absolutely bananas and dub it as the greatest comeback in the history of UFC and MMA and the greatest thing that he's ever seen. Don't get me wrong, I love Joe Rogan. But yeah, I really thought this was Brad Tavares' fight, and I think he just got caught. I'm surprised. It's not like I don't think Brad Tavares has gotten KO'd much, if at all. So yeah, a little bit disappointed by Brad, to be perfectly honest, but happy for Tim.
Yeah, you know, like I said, before the fight, I thought, you know, he'd be dominating in the clinch. I thought he'd use his strength. But, yeah, I was absolutely dumbfounded by the fact that Brad, you know, absolutely dominated him in every single aspect of the fight. And, you know, let's be honest, up until that crazy comeback from Tim, you know, Brad just absolutely annihilated him and, you know, just made him look like, you know, he just didn't belong in the ring with him. You know, Brad Tavares looked great. You know, his conditioning looked great. He looked strong. He looked mean. But unfortunately, he got caught. And I think, and we'll see if we can get Tim Boetsch on the show in the near future and to have a chat to him about this. I think Tim needs to change his nickname to the Comeback King, because I mean the guy has had so many comebacks. When he got that punch landed on Brad, I was like, whoa, what's going on? Everyone was like, whoa, you know, Twitter was blowing up. You know, I was really happy for Tim. I felt sad for Brad, but you know, he's a young guy. He'll bounce back. I'm sure he'll win a few of his next fights. But yeah, definitely crazy from Tim. And I think what was crazy as well was, you know, Tim landed a couple of good crisp punches on Brad, and Brad just ate him. Like he just took him, he wore him, and you know, nothing happened. Tim just landed, and it didn't look like the biggest punch in the world, but it was just the way that Brad moved towards that punch. It was just the angle, but you wouldn't say like, whoa, you know, that is the biggest punch I've ever seen. Like Tim landed a lot harder punches during that fight, and Brad just wore him, which made me think, man, this guy's a Terminator. But anyway, so it was crazy to see that. It just shows you that a knockout doesn't come from these huge, ridiculous punches. It's about, the momentum, the angle, the spot, how the other guy's moving, how he's breathing at the time. Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy to see. Happy for Tim, sad for Brad, but a huge future for Brad still. And, good to see that Tim, was able to win it. Like he said, he had a bit of a tough run. He fought last week's guest, Luke Rockhold. Obviously Luke beat him in the first round with an inverted triangle Kimura. That I didn't think I'd read that out before. When somebody wins. But, before that, he did beat CB Dollaway in a split decision. So when it comes to Tim, I think he's one of those guys that fans are going to get behind because he's one of those regular Joes, that sort of pulls out a win. Sort of one of those Rockies, kind of pulls out a win. A lot of these regular Joes, sitting around at home can relate to that. And, I think that's good for the UFC as well. So, yeah, definitely an interesting one.
Yeah, absolutely. Tim Bosch lives to fight another day. And like you said, he did lose to Luke Rockhold, beat CB Dollaway. And prior to that, Mark Munoz and Costas Philippou, got the better of him. So, yeah, good stuff for Tim. Now, another guy that was sort of fighting for his career was Gray Maynard. And he versed Ross Pearson in the co-main event in the lightweight division. Dennis, before we get into the actual fight, what did you think? How did you think this one was going to play out?
It's tough because, you and me, we like certain guys, but when we watch the fights, we don't go for certain guys over another a lot of the times. But with Gray, I think a lot of MMA fans, such as myself, and I think such as yourself, Cass, we have such a connection with him because, we watched him for so many years. He's had so many great fights. His fights with Frankie Edgar were legendary. He's sort of the unofficial ex-champ of the division because, a couple of times that, he really looked like he dominated. And, going into this fight, I was definitely on the Gray Maynard train, even though Ross Pearson's getting married in Australia. And, you and me and Cass, we've met Ross a number of times, and he's a great guy. I was really rooting for Gray in this one. And, as you mentioned, wanting to see him continue fight, hoping that, his chin holds up through this one. So going into this one, I was definitely, going for Gray. How about you?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to lie, and yeah, you're right. We try and be as unbiased as possible. I was going for Gray purely because it's sad to see a fighter's career end. And while there's been no official retirement from Gray Maynard, it looks like the end is very, very near. And as far as the matchup goes, I kind of saw Ross Pearson. He was on a really good streak. I would say he beat Diego Sanchez. He's had some really good fights. He obviously knocked out fellow Aussie George Soteropoulos, and he's really been getting his knockout power underneath him ever since that loss to Cub Swanson. He's really been on a roll. On the other hand, Gray Maynard has been basically getting knocked out. He got knocked out by TJ Grant. He got brutally knocked out by Nate Diaz. In fact, they were both just as brutal. And then tonight, unfortunately, he got knocked out by Ross Pearson. And I really thought it was going to be a case of Ross might come out a little bit slow. He's going to find his range. He's going to loosen up like a loosey-goose. And then once that happens, it's basically going to be all over. The only thing that Gray Maynard could really do is use his wrestling, which, to be honest, we haven't seen much of for a long time. I mean, you got to remember, Gray Maynard hasn't won a fight since Clay Guida in 2012. And that was an absolutely terrible fight. That was basically 5 rounds. Yeah, just 5 rounds of circling. Not a single thing happened in that fight. It was one of the worst fights in the UFC. And it was still a split decision, purely because of the lack of action. And prior to that, his win before that was 2010 in Kenny Florian. So that's a scary statistic. Since that, he obviously lost to Frankie Edgar once, drew with him, TJ Grant, Nate Diaz, and now Ross Pearson. As far as the fight goes, Ross looked fantastic. He really looked like he's coming into his own, even more so. Meanwhile, Gray Maynard, he really took a few steps down that ladder. So the big question now is, what's next for both guys? What's next for Ross Pearson? But more importantly, what's next for Gray Maynard? Does he continue fighting? Is Dana White going to retire him? What happens there? What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, absolutely agree with a lot of things that you said. And, watching the fight, I actually thought Gray did a really good job, I thought there were certain parts where he was looking great. Some of his wrestling looked really great. And especially against Ross Pearson, who came in very, very game, took that octagon control early and really looked to make a statement. Unfortunately, with Gray, he does have a tendency to bring his hands down sometimes. The other problem with Gray is his footwork isn't always the best. And the third issue with him, of course, is that he doesn't have much head movement. He's a bit robotic when he's in there. And, his chin has taken such a beating over the years that it's just not there. And I just don't think that Gray has the consistency that he needs to be an upper echelon MMA fighter any longer. And it's not because he doesn't have the skill. I think he definitely has the skill. I just think, if you can't take a punch, if your chin just can't take it, after, years of getting punched in the face, it may be time to think about changing career paths. As we mentioned, we love Gray. It'll be interesting to see what he does over, the next few months. And, I'd love to see him in a Matamoros or like a grappling competition, use his grappling, match up with some of these jiu-jitsu guys. I think there's some great matchups there. But yeah, definitely really, really sad. Ross Pearson looked great. We put out the word on Twitter. Who do people want to see Ross fight? We've had a couple of people say Nate Diaz. Another person would like to see him fight Edson Barboza. Both fights, it's certainly interesting, but Ross Pearson definitely going up that ladder. A very, very hard-working kid, a very skilled fighter, and always improving. So, Ross is definitely someone that we can get behind, and it'll be very interesting to see who they do match him up with. Hopefully, it is a step up, and it is a big name, because I'm interested to see how Ross does against some of the bigger names in the division.
Yeah, look, with Gray Maynard, I honestly would not want to see him in a Metamoros, just purely because Gray Maynard's never been the type of guy to really display submission skills. And at the end of the day, with Metamoros rules, it really is all about going for that decision. I think you're going to see very few guys coming from the UFC that are basically wrestlers, such as the Chael Sonnen, and he was only really there because he was such a massive draw. But, as far as Ross Pearson on who he can fight next, I'd say, possibly the winner of Cowboy Cerrone or Bobby Green. I think that would be interesting and a nice step up for him. Or possibly, maybe Rafael Dos Anjos or Benson Henderson. Guys that might test him in the grappling, test his grappling, basically. Essentially, congratulations to Ross Pearson. I'll be very curious to see what happens with him next. Like we said, the last fight against Diego Sanchez, technically on paper, it's a loss, but I don't think too many people will count it. I think he's definitely ready for a step up in competition. Now, the main event, the light heavyweights, Ryan Bader versus Ovince St. Preux. Dennis, before we go into the fight, what did you think coming to this matchup? How did you think it would go? And did it go the way you thought it would?
Yeah, going into this one, I thought Ryan Bader would go through OSP. I've always been a Ryan Bader fan. I thought he was just, the more experienced fighter in this one. I thought his wrestling was really, really strong. We put out the question to Twitter, and, our bud Kevin Gaslam as well put out the prediction that he thinks Ryan Bader would beat OSP through his wrestling skills. I thought OSP had a lot of potential, but I didn't really think that he's been really tested just yet. And I thought Ryan Bader has been in there with all the biggest animals in the division. So I thought, he's seen it all. He's been there. When it comes to reach, he fought Jon Jones, and sure, he lost. But, there's no one better at utilizing the reach than Jon is. So I thought, he'd be prepared and ready to go. And I was interested in this perspective that Ryan was coming from about losing some muscle mass and, working on his cardio. And it was a 5-round fight, and it was something that I agreed with. I always thought that Ryan had a lot of muscle, and maybe that, cost him sometimes when it comes to the cardio department. So yeah, that's what I was thinking coming into this. And what about you, Cass?
Yeah, look, as far as cardio, I never thought that Ryan really had much of a problem. He's always been an in-shape guy. He's always got the crazy abs. Ever since the Ultimate Fighter, I just think that in a 5-round fight, you need to get that extra boost of cardio. And I believe this was his first 5-round fight, or at least one that went the distance. So, going into a fight like that, you need to be extra prepared. We see a lot of guys. I think Gustafsson, he went to the championship rounds with Jon Jones, very surprised. Chris Weidman went 5 rounds with Lyoto Machida. A lot of guys, the first time they do 5 rounds, they think they can do 5 rounds because they do, 5, 10, 20, whatever rounds in the gym. And it's a very different feeling doing it in sparring and in the gym as opposed to doing it in the actual octagon. Coming into this fight, yeah, I definitely picked Ryan Bader as opposed to St. Preux. Just looking at Ryan Bader's record, I mean, he's faced guys like Keith Jardine, Little Nog, Jon Jones, Tito Ortiz, Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, even the veteran Vladimir Matyushenko, Glover Teixeira, and his last couple of fights, he's absolutely dominated Anthony Perosh and Rafael Cavalcante, Fejao. Now, OSP obviously brought a few interesting things in the fact that he had power and he had wrestling, but OSP really hasn't versed that good of a bunch of guys. I mean, he's versed guys like Ryan Jimmo, Nikita Krylov, Cody Donovan, John Vellante, and TJ Cook. I think the best guy by far on his resume is Gegard Mousasi, and he lost. So I really thought that Ryan Bader had the experience, he had the... I thought he was, it's not so much about having the better wrestling, but I just thought he knew how to use it more. Not to mention he did have the power, and, you know, like they said a lot during the fight, OSP, he really lacked the fundamentals. He's one of these new breed kind of fighters where they're very, very athletic. They have raw strength, power, agility, athleticism, but I think he's still a bit young in his career. He's only been fighting since 2008. I think there's a lot of things that OSP needs to work on. I think this loss will honestly make him stronger because coming into that fight, he was on a, I think, 5 or 6 fight win streak. I think 5 fight win streak. So this is one that's definitely going to make him stronger as a fighter.
Yeah, I agree with you, you know, and if this was the first time people have seen OSP fight, I don't think they'd be very impressed. Like you said, lacking in the foundation department, flat on his feet, no real structure to his game plans, stands there with his hands down, relies purely on his athleticism and length to get the job done, and that just doesn't work against the elite fighters in the division. He would never be able to pull that out against the champ. He would never be able to compete with anyone, you know, really up there in the top 10 with those skills. The only way OSP can really come out of this on top is if, like you said, he learns from his mistakes and comes out, you know, a much better OSP. I think just because he's got the athleticism, just because he's got the reach, doesn't mean that he can just stand there and rely completely on that. He needs to take that and combine that with crisp footwork, with good combinations. You know, he needs to work more on his wrestling defense as well, and his conditioning too. I mean, watching this fight, it looked like his corner thought it was a 3-round fight because that's all he was prepared for. In that 4th and 5th round, he was exhausted. And, of course, that probably was because Ryan was coming in there and taking him down. But, you know, just wild, crazy strikes. And, you know, I was really unimpressed with OSP in this fight. I think even if OSP beat Ryan because of the length that he has with his hands, I don't think that would do much for him in terms of the eyes of the fans and the people watching at home. I think there's a lot of improvements that OSP needs to make in order to compete with some of these upper echelon guys. And, you know, Ryan Bader, he did a really, really good job. I know a lot of people said that this fight was boring. For me, it was really interesting to see how Ryan Bader could handle OSP's length. I thought he did a really, really good job. Some great takedowns. You know, he went in and out, and, you know, that's all he could do against a guy like OSP. It's very tough to get your hands going against a guy that, you know, can throw a punch, you know, that far back and land it across your face. OSP has ridiculous power, some great kicks. He landed this one kick, and it looked like Ryan was like, all right, I'm not taking any more of that. But, yeah, a great win for Ryan Bader, and interesting to see who he gets next. Because like you mentioned, Cass, he's versed some of the best in the division, and he's lost to a lot of them. So will it be a case of Ryan getting a rematch with some of the people that he lost against, or will he just get another up-and-coming person in the division? It'll be interesting to see. What did you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people have to give Ryan respect because OSP is one of those guys, if he's not dominating, he's going to make guys look bad because he's still a very dangerous fighter. With his reach, with his knockout power, and his wrestling to boot, he's going to make a lot of guys look bad. And Ryan Bader had to fight a very smart fight. He was, I believe, the smaller man coming in. At least that's the way it looked here. He was obviously at a reach disadvantage. And given the fact that Ryan does have knockout power, I don't know how much of it he had in this fight, considering the loss of muscle mass, but OSP definitely had it. So essentially, the whole time when OSP was standing, he was a dangerous guy, and Ryan Bader really had to mix things up, really be a complete mixed martial artist to take advantage of OSP. And he did, and he fought a brilliant game plan. He did what he had to do, so, you know, my hat's off to Ryan Bader. As far as what's next for Bader, I mean, in terms of the light heavyweight division, you know, Anthony Rumble Johnson or Alexander Gustafsson, they both need a fight, and it looks like they might be versing each other, but we'll see. I'm really curious to see if Ryan Bader can continue this streak. He's on 3 at the moment. We'll see if he can make it 4, and yeah, I'll really be looking forward to his next fight.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous fight. On a side note, the UFC wanting to put Johnson and Gustafsson together. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You get these two guys that can be legitimate contenders for the belt in a division where, you know, you got to have your contenders waiting around because Jon Jones goes through guys. Like a fat kid threw a cake over, you know, around at the restaurant around the corner. So you take these two guys who have all this hype behind them and you put them up against each other, essentially annihilating one. That makes no sense to me when it comes to the UFC and what they're thinking behind it. I mean, of course it would make a great fight. Of course we want to see it, but, you know, just from a business marketing or even, you know, a perspective for the division in the future, it's not something that I'd want to see. But yeah, definitely if Ryan could get a fight with either one of those guys, I absolutely would love to see it. And yeah, you and me, Cass, we ran into Ryan Bader's grandmother in 2010. She was a lovely person. On a side note, on the way to the weigh-ins, you know, he seems like such a great down-to-earth guy. We've met him a number of times. This one time, he accidentally dropped his phone when I was having a chat to him, and he's a great guy, didn't mind it. So it went all over the floor. The battery slid one way, the phone slid the other way, and he pretended to be mad, but good old Bader, you know, always a nice guy. So yeah, definitely interested to see that. Other thing about the fight were the corners. Some hilarious comments made by the corners for OSP and Ryan Bader. OSP's corner in the last round, doing what I think a lot of corner men should do, you know, telling the guy, hey, look, you know, you got to win this round. You got to get the finish. I mean, it was a little bit loud. It was a little bit too loud, but I think he woke up some of the crowd that fell asleep during the fight as well. But yeah, I love to see that kind of stuff. You know, I think a lot of coaches just sort of go, oh, you know, that you did so well. You won that round, when it's not true. So it was good to see a coach sort of trying to take the moment in the hands and, you know, try and make something happen from it.
Just on that note, OSP's corner did very well in giving him very concise instructions on what exactly he had to do, what kind of moves to use to set up his punches, you know, kicks, all that kind of stuff. Who could forget the BJ Penn incident of 86 with the, you can beat this little cocksucker, come on and get him, when he was versing Frankie Edgar. You know, some of the worst some of the worst advice from a corner I've ever seen. So it's good to see OSP's corner not only giving him good instructions but waking him up.
My favorite instructions from a corner, Cass. Ray Longo to Chris Weidman in the first Anderson Silva fight. Punch him in the fucking chest.
Punch a hole, yeah. Punch a hole in his chest. Yeah.
Gotta love Longo, man. But that's the kind of stuff that gets me with some of these corner guys. You know, I think the guys in the corner don't realize that they have the power to change a whole fight around just by what they say to their fighter. And it depends on what guys respond to, because not everybody responds to someone yelling at their face and putting up pictures of their kids and going, do it for them. But you got to know what works for your fighter. As a guy in the corner, you got to go from a mental approach with this stuff. And props to OSP's corner, like you said, doing a great job tonight. And unfortunately, OSP not being able to implement any of that advice, really. You
know what? Just off the top of my head, I've been watching a lot of Ultimate Fighter recently, and off the top of my head, you know, some guys that get a funny rap. And it's, funnily enough, those are the guys that are really good coaches. Not all in all, but Tito Ortiz. Regardless of how you feel about Tito Ortiz, he's always been a really, really good coach, really good at, you know, getting into fighters' heads and, you know, building that rapport. Jason Mayhem Miller, another guy who sort of went off the deep end a little bit, but he was a fantastic coach throughout the whole season. And then there's, of course, Chael Sonnen, you know, another fantastic coach, really good with his psychology. So, yeah. Big ups to OSP's corner in this fight, and big ups to Ryan Bader and his corner. And of course, over OSP's corner, when they were saying, who's perfect? You're perfect.
Exactly right. And you know, some of the worst coaches in tough history, just in the side note, Rampage Jackson did not want to be there, did not want to be the coach. And it was very clear with what he said that I'm not here to really coach. I'm just here because I am. But guys, you know, that's the episode right there. An interesting week in MMA. While we're talking about MMA, if you're in Australia and you're visiting Melbourne, make sure you check out the MMA Fight Store in the city on Elizabeth Street. You can find out more information about them at www.mmafightstore.com.au, or check them out on Twitter. They need some followers, MMA_Fight Store. Check them out. You know, they do a great job. And me and Cass were able to go down there, interview Diego Sanchez, which is something else the fans should check out. Isn't that right, Cass?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a fun little video, Diego Sanchez live video interview on the YouTube channel, Submission Radio AU. We play a couple of fun games with Diego, not to mention he talks about Dan Hardy. One of those games is who wore it better. We show him 3 pictures of three outfits, and he decides who wore it better. He also decides on which of his many hairstyles were his favorite. So it's a nice, fun little video. Check that out. In fact, I believe we're going to throw the link in the description below. Big thank you to Diego Sanchez for doing that. Big thank you to MMA Fight Store for letting us do the interview there. And a big thank you to all our guests from this week, such as Randy Couture, Phil Davis, and of course the always insightful Javier Mendez. And a big thanks to you guys for listening to the show. We always appreciate it. We always appreciate comments and feedback. Let us know what you think. If you like us, subscribe. Like the video. Of course, check us out on Twitter at SubmissionAus, SubmissionAUS. And we'll be back next week. We've already got some awesome guests lined up for next week, so definitely can't miss that one.
That's right, guys. Confirmed for next week. We've got Chris Lieben. He's going to be on the show along with some other guests. So make sure you check that out. And, if you have any questions or comments, like Casper said, contact us. Check out our website, www.submissionradio.com. And we have some great content coming out from the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Australian legend, Kit Dale. We promised you some juicy content from Metamoris. We sat down with Kit. We had a great interview. Make sure you check out Kit Dale and check out his new school if you're in Australia. Come down to Melbourne. It's in Paran, 61 Commercial Road. Make sure you check it out. Me and Cass were down there, and it's a top-notch facility.
Yeah, it's sick. Very nice, very clean, and of course a very good instructor in Kit Dale. It's called Infinity in Paran. Check it out. Till then, guys, till next week, that's us for another week. I hope you enjoyed the fights, hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week. Peace out.